Hi everyone, Bear from Bear Reads Books. Welcome back to my channel. Time to talk about the Booktube prize. So it must be the first couple of days of April. And the Octafinals are now complete, and I'm able to talk about the 6 books that I read for the Octafinals. And I was in fiction group, I'd like to say G, I always forget. And I'm going to go through a little brief summary of each of the 6 books that I read in no particular order. And then I'll give you my thoughts and rankings for the list in itself. So overall, I think Group G let me down a bit. It was a really easy decision to place the first couple, and a really hard decision to try and organise the last bunch because I simply thought I didn't like them. But in no particular order, let's talk about what's in this group. So this is the order that they're in my little voting thingamy online. So this doesn't give away the rankings at all. So in no particular order. So top of the list, Barn 8 by Deb Olin Unferth. And this tells the story of a group of animal rights activists who decide to steal 1 million chickens. 1 million chickens from this huge industrial egg farm, and they gather support from all over the state and all over the country, because to steal 1 million chickens it takes a lot of people and a lot of effort. So they bring people from everywhere to converge on this egg farm, and it's all the planning and espionage that goes along with trying to plan and pull off something like this. So it really has this vibe of like an Ocean's 11, a crazy undertaking, a crazy criminal undertaking that takes so much planning and has so many moving parts that it couldn't possibly succeed. So that's the premise behind Barn 8. And it's called Barn 8 because it's Barn 8 out of this huge big farm which has, I think, 10 or 11 barns. It's Barn 8 that causes them all sorts of issues. I'm not going to do a full review, no spoilers, that's it for Barn 8, just a little summary of what you can expect. Next on the list is Jess Kidd, Things in Jars, and this is a mystery. And I've never read Jess Kidd before, but this is wholeheartedly a mystery, but not a modern mystery. It's very much written in the style of a Sherlock Holmes, and the mystery itself is complex. Like, it is not easy to decipher in the way that a Sherlock Holmes is sometimes not easy to decipher, because there's so many red herrings and so many characters in and out of the story really quickly that you constantly have it in your head that, no, this person did it, no, this person did it, or these two people are working, no, and you're constantly changing your mind about what the focus of the mystery should be. And the whole thing's brought together by, like Sherlock Holmes, brought together by the detective trying to solve the mystery. That is Jess Kidd, Things in Jars, set in a Victorian setting, I guess, Georgian setting? No, I can't remember. I don't know. set in a late 19th century setting. So so it has all of the language and descriptions that go along with that. So it was pretty cool. Number 3 on the list, Kelly Jo Ford's Crooked Hallelujah. Man, what do I say about this one? This was some disconnected stories, so some individual stories that were connected by very tenuous, sometimes tenuous threads about... It's really hard to even say what this thing's about. You can tell where this is going on my rankings. I struggled seriously with this. Kelly Jo Ford's Crooked Hallelujah. I found it very difficult to get a handle on this at all, and so I think just by me trying to give you a description of what this is about kind of leads you to where I'm going to put this on my list. But let's carry on. Next on my list is Carter Sickles' The Prettiest Star. And I think in my last video I called it The Luckiest Star or something else. That was horribly wrong. The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. And this tells the story of a young man, a young gay man who, when he comes out to his family, he decides to leave his Midwest, or I think Midwest family home and move to New York. And he spends years in New York being, or trying to be, his best self until we're talking about the 1970s and 1980s, until he comes home. He decides to come home when he falls sick from HIV and is looking to pass away. So he comes home to be with his family. What this means is it's an exploration of how people like the main character are treated in the 80s by the medical profession, by their family and friends, by everyone that he meets. So it's a very, very sad story about a homecoming and a repairing of relationships as a man prepares himself to die. That is Carter Sickles' The Prettiest Star. Next, Catherine Lacey's Pew. Again, very strange, in the style of, in the allegorical style of a Lanny, Max Porter's Lanny, where there's meaning upon meaning upon meaning. But really, Pew is a person who wakes up on the pew of a church, being prodded awake by one of the congregation or one of the people that work at the church, and they take her into her. They take Pew into their home and feed her and clothe her and give her a place to sleep. But it's never really clear who Pew is, whether they are a man or a woman, what race they are, what age they are, and all of these things seem incredibly important to the people that have taken Pew into their lives. So they treat Pew differently because they don't know and they're not able to classify Pew in the way that they want. Because all of their preconceptions about how to treat people are based on how old they are, what sex they are, and what race they are. So they don't know how to behave or how to treat Pew or what they should do with them because they can't categorize them. So it's trying to say something very important about how we categorize people before we choose how to treat them or before we choose how to behave around them. Very, very interesting. That's Catherine Lacey's Pew. And finally, Sylvia Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic. Now, the Sylvia Moreno Garcia's other book, previous book, was in last year's Booktube prize, so it was nice to see her show up again in this year's Booktube prize. And Mexican Gothic is very much more horror than we saw last year. So there's a lot more demons, a lot more blood, a lot more gore, and I kind of like that about Sylvia Moreno Garcia's book. It tells the story of the story of a woman who is married into a family and who is living now in the household of that family, and her mind is slowly unraveling as she spends more and more time in this house. And her cousin comes to visit under the instruction from the woman's father to try and find out what's going on in this house first of all, but also to help her get out and to save her if she needs to be saved. So it's very, very interesting, and it's reminiscent of a book I read the year before last, Wilkie Collins' The Woman in White. It's got that kind of eeriness and spookiness and foreboding around it all the way through, which I kind of liked. So they're the 6 books. And as I said, they were very easy for me to put the first 2 together, and then really difficult for me to try and separate out the last 4 because I just didn't like them. So here we go. I'll start at the bottom. Number 6 I had as Kelly Jo Ford, Crooked Hallelujah, and you may have guessed because it was so fractured and convoluted and tangential that I could barely even describe to you before what I had read. That's how much I disliked this book. I just didn't get it. I don't know. I still don't know what I read. And I could read off the description from the back of the book or read off the description from Goodreads if you want, but it still wouldn't help me understand what the hell I'd read. So I'm just not going to do that. Number 6, Crooked Hallelujah. Number 5, Pew. It was an interesting concept, and I think it was really trying to say something quite good. I think on balance, trying to compare it to everything else in the pool, it ends up quite low, but I think it did a reasonably good job, but just not there. I think whatever it needed to say, whatever it was trying to say, didn't go far enough. So that's number 5. Number 4, Debo and Unferth, Barn 8, and similar to Pew in that it seemed like a great caper. It seemed like a great story that needed to be told. And I mentioned before that it had this feel of Ocean's 11 to it, like this really complex heist story that could have been a lot of fun and really funny and really action-packed, but I think it wasn't. It didn't evolve those parts of the story enough. I think what the problem is, and I haven't thought too much about this, I think what the problem is it tried to take itself too seriously, and it could have got the same powerful message across by just not taking itself quite so seriously. So that was rated number 4, Barn 8. Number 3, and this was the hardest decision as to how do I get to the best book of the bottom 4, and that was Jess Kidd's Things in Jars. I think it had a lot of promise. I think the mystery itself was fantastic. The overall foreboding and the complicatedness, if that's a word, of the mystery carried it through. And then the sleuth, the person who's solving the mystery, was a great and a perfectly drawn character, and a female sleuth, a female detective, which is great. I would love to see more books where the detective is a female. I think that was really good, and I think that plays really nicely in this late 19th, early 20th century historical space that it sits in having a female detective. I think that's a really interesting twist. So that was number 3, Jess Kidd, Things in Jars. That was the difficult decision, is how do I rank the best of a bad bunch, or a best of a bunch that I really didn't enjoy, which left the 2 quite clearly at the top. And I didn't have problems ranking the top 2. Number 2 for me was Silvia Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic. I think it did a much better job at tension and foreboding and mystery and horror, Gothic horror, than her previous book did. So for that, it carried me forward over and over and over and all through the book. And I thoroughly enjoyed Mexican Gothic, number 2. But for me, and I read this last year, it's the only book in the list that I read outside of the Booktube prize, and I read middle of last year, or when it came out, September last year. It was amazing when I read it, and when I reconsidered it in light of these new books that I've read. I didn't reread it, but when I reconsidered it and rethought about it, and in light of these other books, it still was the standout of Group G, and that is Carter Sickles' The Prettiest Star. It is far and away the best book of Group G. The others were, my second and third rankings were good, but couldn't hold a candle to The Prettiest Star. I'm very, very happy for The Prettiest Star to go through, and I hope it goes a long way. I really can't see any of the others going beyond the quarterfinals, so the next round. But super happy to see Carter Sickles, The Prettiest Star, going through. And I hope everyone else that's read Section G or Group G feels the same. I think The Prettiest Star was the absolute standout. So that's it for my Group G Octafinals fiction. And I'm not sure what I'm going to be assigned for quarters starting April and reading through April, May. I may be assigned non-fiction, which will be a complete switch. What I'm hoping for is that I get a reasonably rounded group to read in, whether it be fiction or non-fiction. I felt this one was particularly one-sided, and I hope the next one, whether it be fiction or non-fiction, is a little bit more rounded group. But I think as we get further into the competition, that will naturally occur. That's it for me. Carter Sickles, The Prettiest Star. It was amazing. If you have not read it, you absolutely should. It is very, very good. Oh, and I must say, before I go, this is the first Booktube prize, because I did Booktube prize last year. This is the first group I've done since Booktube prize began last year and this year for me, where I didn't have one single physical book. All of these 6 I either read on ebook or audiobook. I didn't need to buy any of them. I didn't get any of them out of the library, so there were no physical books here. And that was an interesting way to engage with a group of books. I've never done that before, and I'm not sure. And it was part of it was about availability. I looked on my various apps that I used, and I looked on what was available to me and in what format, and it seemed that they were all available in an ebook or audiobook, so that's the way I went for it. So I didn't actually buy any. I'm not sure what will happen next. I'm not going out of my way to make that happen again, but we'll see how we go. All in all, an enjoyable group, but very divisive. So I was easily able to see what was at the top and what was at the bottom. So we'll see how we go for the next round. Enjoy your day, everyone, wherever you may be, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.